And now, two pigeons bemoaning the fact you can stream DirecTV satellite-free.
DirecTV gives you access to apps like Netflix and live sports right next to each other.
I don't get it.
Let me put it in pigeon terms. It's like that one amazing dumpster with the old fruit and cardboard all in one place.
How am I supposed to keep up with illustrative metaphors when you are making me so hungry?
Get live TV and streaming apps together without a satellite. Requires Gemini device and additional paid subscriptions to watch Netflix and other third-party apps. Terms and restrictions apply.
Hey, what's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome back to the Ram Skinny here on the LAFB network. Pumped to be back with you all, Ramley. A week off. My man Skinny T was traveling down in the great country of Mexico. I'm excited to hear all about that, but he is back home, so welcome back. So a week off, but excited to get into it. We are 24 hours or so from training camp kicking off. First media availability is on Wednesday, and obviously all throughout camp, and we will have plenty of coverage for you right here on the Ram Skinny and always on LAFBnetwork.com. But first and foremost, my man, how's Mexico? Welcome home. How you doing?
Thanks, man. It was great. Mexico City specifically, just checking out all the sights and the food and the experiences, and it is quite the experience. And it's an intense place.
Yeah,
huge population, traffic everywhere. If you ever get down there, find the city bikes that they have. They're called EcoBC. You can ride those around. It's a little scary. You might feel like you're going to die, but it gets you around fast.
I love it. No, I'm jealous. Sounds so great. Like when most Americans go to Mexico, they're going to like the beach resort towns, like, Cancun, Cabo, Puerto Vallarta. And so I feel like it's rare that people go to Mexico City, and it's on my bucket list. Definitely one of those. It's like what, top 5 most populous cities in the world, I think.
I believe it. Yeah. Looking out the window, taking off from Mexico City Airport. I mean, it just continues to go. It's just, it's somewhat like LA like that, but bigger and older too. It's fascinating. I highly recommend it.
Oh yeah. And as a Denver native, Mexico City is one of the other mile high cities in the nation. So high altitude over there.
Yeah, it's actually a little higher than Denver. I looked that up. It's about 7,000 feet.
Yeah, that was always the big thing when obviously they play tons of sporting events, but when the NFL played at Azteca, when the Chargers played at Azteca, that was a big thing. Like, oh, they're playing at high elevation. It's like, well, like play in Denver once a year, but it is a little higher. So, but anyway, welcome back. Glad you're here. Glad you had a great time. It was a nice little week off. Obviously the rest of the work doesn't stop, but glad to be back talking Rams football. Like I said, training camp, essentially, probably depending on when you're listening to this, actually kicked off, and we will be, on media availability, on all the media availabilities, which start Wednesday. But today we wanted to do a quick training camp preview, kind of just storylines we're looking for, position groups we're watching, and then obviously as it goes on, we will update you on all these storylines that we previewed. So as we get into that, show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, gets you a 50% bonus on your first deposit. Make sure to tell them the guys over at the LAFB Network sent you. Plenty of great future bets there for your Rams, for Matthew Stafford MVP, or you can bet on the Dodgers or Angels or any baseball team you follow, since that's the only sport actually going on right now in terms of gameplay. But plenty of stuff over there at betonline.ag. Once again, that promo code is BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Tell them the guys at the Rams Skinny sent you. All right, Skinny, first storyline. We've kind of talked about it quite a bit. There's a lot of good storylines around this team, but I think we should start with probably the most important position. I don't know if I want to say storyline, but position, and that's the quarterback. And it kind of goes twofold, right? We got Matthew Stafford and his contract story. I don't want to say issue yet because it hasn't become an issue, but definitely the contract story. All indications are he will not be holding out. We should see him report tomorrow. But I think that's a storyline worth mentioning. And then 2, kind of the backup quarterback and how that really plays out. Obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo was signed to a 1-year deal to be the backup quarterback. He will miss the first 2 games. So that would mean Stetson Bennett or Dresser Wynn would be the backup for those 2 games. But what does their play in training camp mean for the future? And is there actual excitement around one of those 2 guys? Probably needs to be Stetson Bennett. No offense, Dresser Wynn, but that's kind of the foregone conclusion. will he be able to take over backup duties next year and potential starter duties in the future? So that's the first storyline. Top of your head, what's kind of what you're really looking forward to at the quarterback level in training camp?
I mean, I think really getting that backup quarterback situation hammered out. I think that's super important. It's something year over year that they continually try to get right. And they've really struggled since they've kind of pivoted away from, John Wolford and that kind of action, and trying to find somebody that can actually go into a game if in the event that Stafford is forced to miss a game due to injury, which, as we know, as we age, it gets harder and harder to stay healthy. So yeah, in terms of the Stafford side of things, I'm, like you said, it's not an issue, right? Not an issue yet if he shows up and he's ready to go. So, but it is, that the backup quarterback situation, it's a bit of a puzzler. They're at least handling it well by bringing in a veteran in Jimmy Garoppolo, somebody that has proven that they can move the ball down the field. And they still have a card in their back pocket for Stetson Bennett. And out at camp, what you gotta see from him is who is leading that second team.
Yeah. Okay. Last question, looking back, because in the rest of really just now, we're all looking forward. The season's starting, training camp, we're looking forward. But last thing, looking back, since it hasn't started yet, I feel like we didn't talk we obviously mentioned it leading up to the decision of backup quarterback and whatnot. But I think after they signed Jimmy, we didn't talk about it a ton. But we mentioned Carson Wentz, being the guy that we thought they should bring back because he looked decent in that Week 18 game against the Niners, and then he could get integrated with the system. Still fairly young, so really in reality, being a former second overall pick, a guy that we thought, hey, in 2-3 years, he's still in his early 30s, basically like when the Rams got Matthew Stafford, he could potentially take over that starting role. They decided to not re-sign him. They signed Jimmy, so we all thought like, okay, it must have been a money thing, or Carson Wentz wanted to go somewhere to become a starter again. So it must have been either he was asking too much money to be a backup, or he wanted to go and compete for a starting role. Well, he ends up signing with the Chiefs. No shot at a starting role under backup Mahomes. And his 1-year deal is virtually identical to Jimmy Garoppolo's deal. And guess what? He can play in all 17 games. He doesn't have to miss 2. So just last looking back question, is it mystifying to you why they allowed it to happen? Or do you think maybe everything we said was true, but Carson Wentz maybe he played his cards too rough and there was just no market for him and the Rams just moved on quicker? Like, what's your thought?
It's a strange one because we liked him, but Stetson Bennett is a guy that they really liked at one point, enough to use a draft pick on him to try him out. And they don't take that lightly. That's not like they're drafting quarterbacks left and right. So they were all in on Stetson Bennett as far as that goes. So, they got to find out what they have in him, and having a guy like Carson Wentz around doesn't give him more opportunities. Jimmy Garoppolo is obviously a stopgap issue where he's obviously not going to be the future of Rams quarterbacking. Is Stetson Bennett? They got to find that out. They got to get him a lot of reps. And so, it's in terms of the Carson Wentz of it all. Yeah, it's a bit strange, but it just seems like they were a bit more in on finding out what Stetson Bennett is. I think we kind of know what Carson Wentz is at this point.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem like there was a big market for him out there. It's not like somebody came in, swooped him up right as free agency opened up. So, yeah, maybe the league's in on exactly what Carson Wentz is right now.
Yeah, I like that reason. That actually does make a lot of sense. Is that they really wanted to give Stetson Bennett every opportunity to kind of showcase that he could be the guy. And with Carson Wentz, yeah, you're right. He's a guy that at his age, at his draft capital. Not that Jimmy G's not trying to start again. Like, I'm not saying the guy's not competitive, but if we know what Carson Wentz is, we definitely know what Jimmy Garoppolo is, and he is older, and I guess they both have injury history. But anyway, that's the state of the room. I'm really excited to see kind of how it plays out. Matthew Stafford, we know, is going to be great. As we've been saying, like, the contract for now is not an issue. Hopefully, it does not become one. But I don't think it will have any sort of impact on this season moving forward. What the future holds, that's a different story. But for now, I think it'll be business as usual and him showing up at camp. So it's really that real true backup / QB3 that'll be enticing to me, and what kind of rapport these guys can get with the receivers and who really shines out. And because, I mean, let's face it, in training camp, which we're going to go to our next storyline, which is probably, I kind of want to talk about the offensive line, but let's face it, in training camp, like, how much do you really see from the offensive line? Because, I mean, they're not even in pads every day. They're not really hitting every day. The quarterbacks you can really kind of see because it's every single drill is involving some sort of, whether it's 7-on-7, 11-on-11 individuals, like there's some sort of rapport being built. So we can get a much better idea. Again, there's no true pass rush on them, but we can get a better idea of who's really rising to the top of being QB2, or just at least QB3 with a chance of QB2 in the future. So I think it'll be fun. It'll be fun to watch over at old LMU, a little closer. We should have a much closer look since such a small facility.
It should be. I'm super interested to see how that's all going to play out at the sold out record time. It's hard to get. It's a hard ticket to get now.
Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, we've talked about it. It's going to be such a cool venue, but man, it just everything we were saying about the size obviously came to fruition. The fact that the tickets were gone like instantaneously, and at Irvine, what made it nice is you could literally pretty much anyone could go. It was just so massive that. I'm trying to think, and I'm not saying they didn't sell it because they not enough interest. Like there was like 15,000 people there some days at training camp, which dwarfs some of America's like great NFL teams. When you look at like Broncos training camp and Cowboys training camp, like they've never had 15,000 people like Rams camp did, but it's just a massive area. And now it's like, I don't know the number. I don't know if they released it, but in my head, it's probably 2,000 can be there, maybe 3.
Yeah, you're probably right. I don't know the area at all, but they're already saying don't bring your car. Figure out another way to get there.
I don't know how parking that just I mean it's a beautiful campus, but it's small. I mean I think that our guy Nico goes to school there who writes for us. I'm pretty sure that it's like between 3,000 and 5,000 undergrads. Like it's a pretty small. Like it's like a high school. It's a large high school, I should say, a large high school.
It's going to be a takeover. That's going to be fun to see.
Yeah, so it'll be fun. All right, well, I'll toss it to you. What's the next storyline you want to talk about heading into training camp?
Well, one that I'm really interested in to see is Steve Avila's move to center. It's been a very important position for the Rams. Typically over the last few years, they do a lot of communicating. Obviously, Stafford does his fair amount, but the center is very important, and he's taking on a big new workload. He played center when he was at TCU, so it's not a brand new position for him. Mm-hmm. But this is Matthew Stafford's third new center in 4 years with the Rams. So, obviously they did fine when they moved from Brian Allen to Coleman Shelton. But it's just something that I'm curious. I'm going to be watching for, bobbled snaps, if there's any kind of miscommunication pre-snap. I just read earlier today that one of the highlights of last season for the Rams was an incredibly low penalty rate pre-snap. Well below the average for NFL. So that's something you want to see again. And, there's just a lot of pressure on them right now to get everything right. And if they, we've seen in the past that the Rams have had to pivot at the very last minute to kind of get their offensive line to kind of a baseline good level. We saw that a couple of years ago where they just switched it right at the end. So yeah, that's kind of my main one big thing. And that's one of those things you can see because they're snapping the ball. It's not necessarily a blocking exercise, but it's an exercise of communication. It's an exercise of like I was saying, just getting the handoffs or getting the snaps correct and all that. So
yeah, no, 100%. That'll be extremely important one, and again, not one that I don't think either of us are concerned about, but definitely one to watch and make sure that there's not just cleanliness in terms of the snap and the communication. But also clearly this was the right move because some things you can check some boxes, but is it actually an upgrade or did you just now downgrade your center position in favor of signing Jonah Jackson or whatever in free agency to a big contract? So, which again, I don't think we think is the case, but these will give us the first couple weeks of getting that true indication of what really is. And then, knowing how McVay operates, we won't see these guys in training, or we won't see these guys in preseason. So all we'll see is in training camp of how well they're meshed. Because come preseason games, maybe we'll see Avila, play a couple series just because it's first time moving over. But I would definitely say we won't see Havenstein. We won't see Dotson. Probably won't even see Jonah Jackson, even though he's first time with the Rams. But I mean, he has some injury history and he's coming off an injury. So I don't think it's likely. We certainly will not see all starting 5 offensive linemen together. So what we see in camp will indicate what we'll see hopefully moving into the regular season. So very important. I'll just keep moving forward. We'll keep it on offense.
Sure.
We've talked about it before, but wide receiver 3/4. That is the true, really, I guess you could call it question mark in reality. I mean, maybe arguably the best wide receiver duo in football with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. But who is that third guy? Is it Demarcus Robinson? Is it Tutu Atwell? Is it the rookie Jordan Whittington? Is it, one of the other former practice squad or waiver wire wonders, if you will? And so I think that is going to be interesting to see who really makes that leap. Is it one of the undrafted free agents? Do we see Drake Stoops make a high impact as another white slot receiver that this Rams offense loves to deploy? So yeah, wide receiver 3/4, who's really going to step up to be that other asset in this offense alongside Nacua and Kupp?
So last year, Puka Nacua never repped with the first team that I remember seeing.
Yeah,
and he was the one that came in week 1 and just tore it up. And that's history, as they say. So, it's not always about who's on the first team. It's about who's getting a lot of reps, who's getting open, who's making those plays. But on the flip side of that, we saw Allen Robinson. He was kind of a camp darling. He was looking great in 2022. Lo and behold, it didn't turn out so well for Allen Robinson. It looks like his career might be over. Is he on a team? I don't know. But yeah, a big question mark around Tutu Atwell. Where does he fit in? Is he going to make it onto this 53-man roster? I mean, I say that honestly, like they're going to want to give him another shot to prove himself somewhere else if he can't prove himself here. So, I'm keeping an eye on Drake Stoops and Tutu Atwell and how they're used and where they're deployed and what teams are repping with, because they're kind of a similar body type, at least anyway. Both small. Yeah. Stoops is nowhere as fast as Tutu Atwell, but that hasn't gotten him a place on the team. He hasn't found a place for himself. So I'm rooting for Jordan Whittington. So that's I'll also be keeping an eye on him.
Yeah, the sixth round pick out of Texas. I think it'll be really fun to see kind of how he fits, and obviously great size and speed and the intangibles. So how he fits in the offense will be fun to see. And yeah, it's a great point about Nacua because, there is every year that someone in camp that really kind of shines out, and then either they do nothing or someone that no one really talked about all of a sudden rises to the fold. One guy that I've always really liked is Tyler Johnson, out of Minnesota and with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and obviously the Rams grabbed him last year, but didn't really make an impact. But I think he's a talented guy that, if gets enough reps and opportunity, could perhaps have an impact. But aside from wide receiver 3 and 4, like also got to see Cooper Kupp get through camp healthy. I mean, this is now going on 2 years now of just getting banged up. Obviously 2 years ago, missing the rest of the season. But even last year, he got injured in camp, which is why he missed the first, few games. And even down the stretch kind of was still never truly himself. So probably that's most important, even more than wide receiver 3 is Cooper Kupp remaining healthy, and Puka Nacua for that matter. So I'm sure, knowing how McVay and the Rams operate, I'm sure Kupp probably won't even practice that much in camp. I'm guessing he'll be there more as a player coach with a few limited reps here and there, and then we'll just do his work probably off to the side, I'm guessing.
Yeah, speaking of health, Kyren Williams was held out of minicamp and OTAs as well. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. McVay always says it's just out of abundance of caution. They're going to err on the side of caution with these guys, but sometimes he doesn't always tell the truth about the injury status of his players. So, if he's out there and he's running around and he's looking perfectly healthy, that's great. That's great news.
All right, so let me ask the next I'll ask a question like this in preview. What position, and this will be our last offense, then we'll wrap up the show with a couple defense. At the end of camp, what position will have more players on the roster, tight end or running back? Because you figure usually you're only keeping around 3 of each of those positions. The Rams obviously currently have, I think, 5 running backs on the roster. And technically they have, I think, 7 tight ends. Obviously, they definitely will not keep 7, but drafted one last year, traded for one last year, signed one this year. Plus, obviously, you have Tyler Higbee. So in your mind, and you can say that they have the same if that's your answer, but what position has more players come roster cuts?
I'm not going to push. I can't push. I got to pick a winner here.
I hope not. But hey.
I'm going to say running back is going to have 4. I think they're going to hang on to 4 of these guys. They added Boston Scott in free agency, and that says something. They drafted Blake Corum. He's safe there. Drafted Zach Evans not long ago. They like Ronnie Rivers. So it's really down to if Zach Evans is kind of, pushing, making a push for that final 4th spot. I think they're getting down to three tight ends. Higbee, we're gonna find out, in terms of his status, if he's gonna go on the IR or something like that. But you got, Colby Parkinson, Davis Allen, Hunter Long. Those are kind of the Hunter Long is on the bubble for me. The rest of those guys, I think, are going to be on the roster.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think in all things being equal, I think that the running back room will have more. Now, I'm based on stuff McVay said back in March and even in OTAs. It seems like Higbee will eventually start the season on the PUP list or something. We haven't heard anything yet. I mean, maybe he's had a tremendous summer, but based on talks in the spring, it seemed like he'd be out for a while, obviously injured in the playoff game. And so if that's the case, then technically I think they would keep 3 and he would be the 4th. And then eventually in the season, they would drop one down to the practice squad and be 3. So I think overall, yes, it'll be 4 running backs, 3 tight ends. If Higbee was healthy, I think it's Higbee, Parkinson, and Davis Allen. Hunter Long is kind of the odd man out. I could see them, though, because of the injury. He's on PUP or on injured reserve, whatever it may be. And then you keep, Parkinson, Allen, and Long. And maybe one of these guys surprises thing. But either way, I think 4 running backs. I think you don't draft one and sign one. And with Kyron Williams' kind of injury history, as great as he is, like you want to have a 4th for insurance. Just in reality, just how the Rams have been at running back period in injuries. I mean, they rarely make it through a year with a guy making it the whole. I mean, when was the last time their starting running back lasted the whole season? Like Gurley in 2016, 2017?
Probably.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating question. I'm going to look into that, and that'll be an article.
Akers never really made it, right? The whole season.
I don't think so. Oh, did he make it his rookie season? Did he play the entire? He might have that year.
He may have. I don't know. That's not important for now, but yeah. So yeah, I agree with you. 4 running backs, 3 tight ends, whatever the iteration looks like based on injury reserve. All right, moving to defense. What's your top story? What are you most looking forward to about this defense that we know nothing about?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. We know nothing about it. Combined 2 years on the defensive front, depending on how you work Michael Hoyt in there or not. I reread something today that Michael Hoyt is a part of the rotation, so he's gonna be in there somewhere for sure. Hopefully not in coverage very often.
Yeah, let's hope. Moving into cornerback.
Probably, yeah, exactly. He's going to drop another 60 pounds. I'm going to stick with a cornerback. I'm curious, what Tre'Davious White is going to look like. Yeah. Is he that all pro form? One of the league's best cornerbacks in his height, but ACL injury, Achilles injury, back-to-back years. Those players don't often come back from that kind of severe injury to get back to that kind of heights. So I just want to see him out there, and there's a lot of chatter that he's been kind of a vocal leader and a coach for the younger cornerbacks out there. So that's always great to see. But I just want to see him out there healthy, running around. He has to take on a significant snap share. So that's all I got to see from him is competence. We don't need him to be an all pro, but we need him to be really good. And that leadership piece is huge. What's your top storyline?
Yeah. And first and foremost, need him to stay healthy. Hopefully that can happen. I think, I'm really, 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 really excited to just see this defensive line rotation. As we've said all along since the draft, like obviously everyone assumes Fisk and Verse will probably both start based on the need for talent there, especially after the loss of Aaron Donald. But will that be the case? Will it be Michael Hoyt still getting first team reps with Verse coming off the bench? Will, Deshaun Johnson, get some more reps on the defensive line ahead of Braden Fisk? What will Bobby Brown III look like in terms of his, starting ability, or is he more of a depth piece? So really excited to see, kind of outside of Kobe Turner, there's not a true like returning or new starter on the defensive front that has really proven anything yet. And like I said, I think it will eventually be Fisk and Verse. That's obviously why you drafted them as high as you did and traded up for Fisk, because you saw not just the high ceiling, but you saw talent now that they could come in and make an impact. But in end of July, first week of training camp, second week of training camp, like how are those reps dispersed? And can one of these guys, Laurel Murchison, can one of these guys that maybe isn't getting the shine as these early draft picks actually be the guys that are at the top of the depth chart come season start? And everyone's like, man, we didn't see this coming. So I'm really excited to see these defensive line rotations.
I mean, taking a step back and even looking at a broader thing, this is going to be our first glance at what Chris Shula is going to be doing on offense.
Yeah.
Jared Verse had his hand in the dirt a lot, and that's not typically how the edge rushers for the Rams have lined up. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly, what kind of defenses he's going to be running. I mean, I remember seeing what Staley was doing out there, and the star roll. Is the star roll a thing of the past now? Is two high safeties. It seems like the safety room is going to be a lot more specific and a little less, moving the pieces around in a versatility kind of way, but it's going to be more of like this is your job. When Cam Kinchins is out there, that's a particular kind of setup they're going to be running there. When Cam Curl is out there, that's going to be different. John Johnson, when he's out there, those are all going to be different alignments, and it's going to be fascinating to see. It's really going to be, we're going to get a peek at his defensive identity for the very first time.
Yeah. And I think to that point, when you just look at this defense in totality, like outside of probably, if we're being completely honest, outside of probably Kobe Turner, Byron Young, and Ernest Jones, there's really no locks at any position. I would say, if you think of anyone else, I know everyone would say John Johnson, everyone would probably say Darius Williams, but I mean, they're both. I wouldn't say there's a lock of anyone else starting outside of the three I mentioned. And so is the approach of training camp like, how do we evaluate and find these 11 best guys? Or is it more of, hey, this is a young group that's all learning together? Are we going to find the best 18 guys and have a really healthy rotation all throughout the season? We basically have our three kind of leaders, or three highest talented, and then the rest is like going to just be a real heavy rotation all throughout from top to bottom. So I think that's something that will be fun to watch too, is like, are there 11 best, or are there 15, 16, 20 best that is just all kind of in this nuanced rotation approach?
Yeah. And to that point, you look in that secondary and who they were trotting out there the last couple of years, the very young guys that, used to make up that secondary. Where does Kobe Durant fit in here? Where's Darian Kendrick fit in here?
Yeah.
Quentin Lake, we've talked about a lot of times, they moved him around a lot. He's probably their most versatile piece right now.
Yeah.
What does his job look like? And so there's so much intrigue on the defense. It's going to be fascinating to see how it's all rolled out and how it all plays out. And, best case scenario, it's kind of like last year where, it's a bunch of ragtag guys put together, but they are able to figure it out and put the pieces together and churn out a decent defense. And that's all we want from them. Yeah. We don't need them to be top 10. We don't need them to be top 5. Just be 15, be 16, be 18, somewhere in there.
Yeah. Just be mediocre. Be mediocre to be
Don't
great.
Lose games.
Yeah. Mediocre to be great. Yeah. I can't wait to see how Chris Shula runs the practices, because it'll be another new DC in this regime. So how his style is different from Raheem Morris, or maybe it'll be pretty similar. I mean, he's been with the team since being in LA. So he's been through multiple different DCs that he's able to take from. So he knows what works. He knows what players respond to. But how will he, now being the lead guy, run these practices and really get the most out of these players efficiency-wise, and you're able to evaluate the best as a coaching staff. So, yeah, I can't wait. We can't wait to be there. We'll be there. I'm actually heading to Big Ten Media Day tomorrow for USC UCLA. You will be staying here for Rams and Chargers training camp. I mean, the sun never sets on the LA Football Network, right? There's always work to be done.
Yeah, you're going all the way back to Indy, one of our favorite places in the world.
Yeah, I'll make sure to tell the Slippery Noodle hello for you.
Appreciate that.
Slippery Noodles. So, any other storylines you want to add, or good there as we head into camp?
No, I think that's a great place to start, and I'm just super excited. If it's feeling like football.
Football is back this week. I would say for probably 70% of fans, we'll call 30% being very casual. 70% of NFL fans are pretty tuned in. Like, training camp it starts. Like, yeah, you have the other fans are like not till like September when the games start. But for the rest of us, football is back. Football is back this week, and we're good until next February now. That sounds nice.
Yeah, it's nice. It's going to be nice to be able to talk about stuff that's relevant and write about things
happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just speculation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that'll be great. So, well, beautiful. Well, thank you all, Ramley, for hanging out with us as always. This is the Rams Skinny here on the LAFB Network. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, Rams LAFB is a YouTube channel. If not, please go hit that subscribe button. It helps us out a ton. LAFBnetwork.com is the website, and you can just search Rams Skinny anywhere you get your podcast. For that handsome devil over there, Skinny T, I'm Ryan Dyer. Everyone have a great day. We'll talk to you in just a couple days, recapping the latest events from Rams training camp.
And now, two pigeons bemoaning the fact you can stream DirecTV satellite-free.
DirecTV gives you access to apps like Netflix and live sports right next to each other.
I don't get it.
Let me put it in pigeon terms. It's like that one amazing dumpster with the old fruit and cardboard all in one place.
How am I supposed to keep up with illustrative metaphors when you are making me so hungry?
Get live TV and streaming apps together without a satellite. Requires Gemini device and additional paid subscriptions to watch Netflix and other third-party apps. Terms and restrictions apply.